recording again. I'm just going to record it and then upload it, the
Okay.
remainder of the show. This happens on Sundays. Unfortunately, we have more technical issues.
Okay.
So, okay, we're good. I'm recording now. So,
Okay, Frank, I wanted to ask you about the topic, and I'm going to ask all of our guests too, but I'd also like to ask you about the topic of radar equipment being used for possible UFO, UAP activity. Can you please give us some information on that? Can you hear me?
hello. Were you asking me? I was distracted. Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah,
You know what?
go to the guests. We're having
I
some
will.
technical
That's
difficulties.
no problem. Michael, have you experienced any information, listening to any information, or been given any information on really good cases regarding radar having been used? I know I think it's Richard Haynes of NASA used reports. I think that radar picked up UFOs. He did like a report on like 2,000 or 5,000 UFOs being caught by radar. Do you have any input on anything that's radar related regarding to the topic of UFOs?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, Dr. Richard Haynes is a longtime client of mine. His
Yes.
organization is called NARCAP, which is the pilot reporting agency for military, commercial, and private pilots who see UFOs, who want to report them but don't want to have the problem that they might get, backlash from their employers. So his reports come in and are recorded anonymously, but many times include radar data, as well as Kevin Day that Deep was mentioning as well. Chief Petty Officer Kevin Day from the Princeton ship using the Spy 1 radar, which was in the Nimitz UFO group during the 2004 Tic Tac UFO encounter. He claims that they were recording these anomalous radar returns for approximately a week to 10 days during this offshore exercise that was going on just west of San Diego. And this is the Spy 1 radar. This is the brand new facility. Matter of fact, they started finding these anomalies as soon as they upgraded to the Spy 1 radar. They even took the Spy 1 radar then and tried to get it tweaked because they thought they could be just anomalous returns. And come to find out that when they did that, the returns even got stronger regarding these flights of Tic Tac UFOs that were coming from north to south. So, yeah, radar is very important. And Peter Davenport, Bill Puckett from the Northwest or UFOs Northwest analyzes radar data all the time because Bill Puckett was a ex-meteorologist for NOAA as well. So it's out there if you can interpret it.
Okay, fantastic. And Dave Mason, have you any anecdotal stories or any information at all, or your perception or opinion on why radar equipment is so vital in discerning possible UFO activities in our sky or over our oceans, etc.?
Yes, it's a different electromagnetic medium. It's a much lower frequency than long-wave IR. It often vets objects in the skies that the pilots have. They don't see anything, but they get a return, and they're told there's something out there. Well, they don't make visual confirmation, so there's something being detected by RF reflection processes. That in itself indicates a different spectrum. And then there's other cases where you have an object that's visually confirmed by a pilot, but it is not confirmed on the ground, even though it may show mass. So that in some cases it's either or. And so I think it is a valid tool. There is some limitations on its range and limitations to mass. So that is an object that is apparently small from a visual perspective. From a great distance, it may not be picked up on radar, but it certainly confirms when an object is detected that it had enough mass to create a reflection back, and that is a significant property to indicate that you have an anomalous object. in a discussion about the radar jamming, it is an extremely difficult thing to do because radar spectrum can be very low frequency and just a few megahertz to several gigahertz or 100 gigahertz and so forth. And so if I was to try to attempt to jam somebody's radar, I would need the appropriate equipment. And in my case, I would use a traveling wave tube amplifier. I would have to know who had a specific radar system and what frequencies to use to jam that. And it's very expensive and very difficult process to do. So to try to do that at random, virtually impossible. I would have to know what I was jamming.
Thank you for answering that. I did want to ask Dr. Irena Scott the same question, and then we're going to move on to Dean Ashley, and I'll introduce him, and that's it. Dr. Irena, do you have any anecdotal stories or opinion on why radar detection of UFO/UAP activity is so important?
I think it's very important because it's another method of studying that. And in my book and in my speech I gave to MUFON this summer, I was suggesting that maybe some UFOs are images, such as laser-made images, such as holograms or volumetric display images. And you don't know exactly how that would work with radar. I mean, they say sometimes you can see an object, but you can't get it on radar. Well, you don't know if that's an image or not. And vice versa, too. You don't know exactly how radar would interact with a hologram. And so I think there's more study needed for that sort of thing to just see whether what's, maybe not all UFOs are solid objects. Maybe some of them are different types of images, and some of them might be very advanced images.
Very good point. We have Dean Ashley on the show, and Dean is a fascinating person. He is deeply involved in the topic of ufology and researching it. He has a BA in English. He joined the Navy in 1996. He became an aviation electronics technician and served for a little over 4 years. He gained the rank of E5, but decided the civilian world was better suited for him. And he eventually found a job as a depot-level FLIR technician and has been in the same position ever since. Welcome, Dean, to our show. How are you?
Very good. How are you doing today?
Good. We actually had a show with just Dean talking about what he does. Dean, can you give us a short synopsis of what you do regarding trying to capture possible UFO activity and what you use, what equipment you use and tools, etc.?
Okay. Our shop consists of some specialized technicians who we work on government level infrared equipment, different manufacturers, different sizes, different standoffs, kind of a variety. So when we fix these turrets, gimbals, we have to do an operational check, and usually we stick them out back on a concrete slab, and we take a look at real world activity to get kind of like a real world look as far as white balance, gains, levels, the same things that pilots or operators are going to see. So in that essence, we see a lot of planes because we're close to NAS jacks. We see a lot of planes and jets. And a couple things that I couldn't explain, I caught on video and I put on YouTube.
I wanted to ask you about things that you do regarding capturing possible UFO activity. Do you feel confident about the equipment you're using? Are you? I know you're overly familiar with it. You've been using it for probably decades now. Do you feel like your equipment, which is probably worth thousands of dollars, is reliable?
Yes. Like I said, it's government level equipment. I'm kind of vague about it because I don't want to reveal too much, but it's
okay.
Actually millions of dollars of equipment. Thousands of dollars would be like the cables, the associated cables. But I think the price tag for these kind of turrets are probably in the $1.5 million range. So we've taken them down to parade rest, to components and circuit cards and modules and put them all back together. Back together because that's our job. But I'm pretty confident that it's not an anomaly such as like dead pixel cluster or something that we're just not used to seeing. So as far as the technology, I'm pretty confident about that.
Okay, I think drones are important to mention to everybody that an awful lot of naive or wide-eyed people that don't have a lot of experience regarding being an expert on looking at the skies and determining what a drone is. Do you think that's an issue, Dean, regarding possible drone activity and people misunderstanding? ET pod.
Viewed them on the infrared, but the thing that people don't really seem to understand is when a drone gets out of your vision. I mean, I'm over 40, so I can't see too well anymore, but drones will get out of. They're very small in the sky as far as like distance. It's that you will see a drone far away, unless it's a very big drone. And I'm talking like DARPA kind of projects where they're doing stuff I don't even know about. But
Right. When we talked to you in an interview, we were talking about the quadcopters, multi-rotors that people fly around like you do for a hobby, regarding your building them and flying them. But we also talked about making a good argument regarding why these objects, the drones, being the drones, are seen in the FLIR UFO videos, could not be drones. Can you give any information on that?
well, I would like to think there's more detail if they were drones, like going back to the Aguadilla case.
Good case.
Yeah. So going back to that, the weird thing about it was it looked kind of like a balloon, but not really. But if it was a drone, you're going to see like props moving. You're going to see different heat from the motors opposed to the plastic chassis of the drone. It's going to be more defined than just a blob moving through the sky or, orb. You're going to see definition to it.
Okay. And then Dave Mason and yourself, Dean, I would like to ask you a very pointed question, and that is, can the both of you chime in on the difference between thermal imaging, low light cameras, and why FLIRs are different? Dave, what is your thought on that?
Well, the FLIR is going to detect, there's actually a couple levels of FLIR. There's the medium wave IR, and then there's long wave IR. And most of the FLIR available is going to be the long wave infrared. The advantage of it is that it allows you to detect electromagnetic spectrum that is not visually or within our visual spectrum. It also gives you the advantage of comparing temperatures. So this is passive temperature measurement. So that in itself gives you another piece of data that you would not get from a conventional camera. You have that advantage. You're actually able to measure a temperature, given, there's humidity differences and things that might affect that. And it's certainly when you're comparing one object to another, you can vet the differences on there. In my experiences of recording these anomalous objects, and I've recorded many, most of these objects measure very cold in temperature. They're down in the -20, -40 Fahrenheit range. And I use select cameras that have cold temperature ranges because that's where I've been detecting most of these objects, although I've had a couple that actually ranged much higher in temperature. But when you're talking with somebody else who has familiarity with thermography, I have no doubt that they've recorded something anomalous because they're very aware of the technology and know its limitations and know the differences between balloons or drones. So I would go, with their opinion on what they've recorded.
Okay, and Dean, do you feel like that pretty much covers it regarding the topic of thermal imaging sensors, FLIRs, and the low light cameras? Or did you want to jump in and say anything else on that? The difference between all of them?
Yeah, I'll add on a little bit. The long wave, like Dave's talking about, that is kind of associated with temperature thermography. So it's used as a tool. Like they have a FLIR 1 module that you can plug into your iPhone, and it shows the temperature and It doesn't have like an auto gain level like midwave. I use the midwave is what we have for government level, and it's not associated with temperature. You'll see, like if you're looking down at a forest and then you look up in the sky, your gains and levels are going to change according to your scene temperature. So the sky is cold and it will boost the level and the gain to try to pull something out of the image. As far as a low light camera, the way I use low light is it's not infrared at all. It's more of like the 900 nanometer spectrum. It's kind of like the security cameras you put up in your house, where they have a near IR LED that will shine and illuminate an area, and then the low light camera will pick that up. So I look at that as more as like a visual camera. So that's the big difference. Is low light is like a visual camera, but just boosted up, that wavelength, 900 nanometer. Thermal imaging is short wave, mid wave, and long wave. Got a little bit of experience with short wave, but mostly mid wave.
This is going to be the last part of the show, unless Frank wants to chime in. But I just wanted to tell our panelists that I spoke with Rich Hoffman, who's on the board of the Scientific Coalition of UAPs, and he gave me some interesting info regarding equipment and tools that folks can use to capture unusual phenomena, or that is being used. I'm going to go ahead and read off that list that he gave me. It is Theodolite. This is an app that has a camera, records GPS, the bearing, can provide the angular size, and help compute distance and attitude for a few bucks. He recommends this over the camera on the iPhone. Another one, Stellarium. This is one of many astronomy tools / apps that allows you to determine whether the object is a star, planet, a comet, and more. GeoStatWatch. This allows you to determine and rule out satellites. Flight Radar 24. Determined aircraft overhead. Lastly, there's a few more, but I'll go ahead and stop here. Teslameter leverages iPhone magnometer to measure background radiation. Deep, Irena, Dean,
just if
and
I
Dave.
could jump in, jump in here real quick, Chant. Stellarium, which Rich mentioned, has a built-in satellite tracking component, so people know.
Oh, that's great.
Maybe it doesn't for the phone app, but it does for the computer app.
Thank you for giving us that valuable input. Just to our panelists, how do you feel about that list? Are you familiar with any of these applications? Anyone, please jump in.
I would.
And this is Dean or Dave?
That's Dave.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm just going to try to understand the question here. What is as to whether or not these devices are going to be useful in vetting the information on there. I would like to just add whole process here. If you're observing, really one way to confirm
Fantastic. All right. Well, I just wanted to let me just go ahead. I have to start recording this. Sorry, just one sec.
No. I've got it recorded, but
you got it. Okay.
Just Sundays, and we have issues like this on Sundays. Not every Sunday we do it, but when
I was
they
just
come
starting a backup recording just in case, so we have a backup recording.
When
So I
they
just
come
wanted
up,
to
it's on
thank
Sunday.
all of our panelists for having been on the show today. Scientist D. Prasad, Dr. Irena Scott. We have the wonderful Dean Ashley. I wish we had been able to talk to you more, who does a lot of research regarding the topic of UFOs / UAPs. And we did do an interview with him, so please look up that interview if you want to learn more about him. And also Dave Mason, who is on the UFO I team with Michael Hall. And we also had a wonderful paranormal lawyer, Michael Hall, on today. So I thank everybody for having been on our show. Thank you so much for your time. We look forward to having you on the show again.
Thanks so much, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to